Now, when I say the NBA needs more rivalries, you might ask, what exactly does that mean? Because on this channel, I've definitely talked about toxicity and bad fans, and, you know, rivalries kind of sound like the thing that creates that. But when I say rivalry, I definitely mean like in a healthy manner. Twitter's not going to be the place where you're going to find a healthy rivalry, but just like competitive rivalry. And part of this, the reason that there isn't these full-blown rivalries, and most of the rivalry is between either fans and players or fans and fans, is because players in the NBA aren't rivals with each other. As toxic as it was with the Pistons and Bulls and Celtics back in the 80s with Michael Jordan and Larry Bird, Isaiah Thomas, like all three of those teams around those guys, like that was the stuff that you look back on and you say, wow, like that was a rivalry. Boston and LA's rivalry obviously was awesome too. And it's like these guys didn't like each other. Like Bird and Magic, once they met each other, they became really good friends. And that doesn't necessarily take something out of it, but like, isn't it fun just sometimes when the NBA players hate each other? Like, wasn't it really fun when LeBron just absolutely was the bear that got poked by Dylan Brooks and then he just absolutely annihilated the Grizzlies? Like, that wasn't fun. I think overall you have to look at that and say that was a net win for entertainment. Like, that was someone tried to fuck with LeBron and he put him in his place, right? And I think that like when you have that type of rivalry and you have these guys that don't like each other that are playing in the playoffs, like with the Heat and the Celtics, that's a rivalry. They obviously respect each other off the court. On that court, it's war. Like it's war. And you need to see rivalries like that. Obviously, Boston and Milwaukee, but these are rivalries that are bred. And the rivalries that are on right now are, the ones like LeBron versus Curry. They're players, not teams. And I think the problem with this that you want these rivalries is these guys don't stay on teams, right? Like they don't, the player movement in the league now is not what it was back then. And therefore, the rivalries are going to be between the fan bases of players and who's trying to be the best player in the league and whose fans are trying to have their player be seen as the best player in the league, and then they're trying to argue with the fans of the other best players in the leagues. And it's really, especially when you have guys like LeBron and KD who've had some destinations in their careers, and there's a lot of fan bases, but at the end of the day, like the rivalries are between players and they're fans, not teams, not fans of teams, fans of players. And that for me is just absolutely, it's just boring. I'm not a fan of that because I don't care who wins between LeBron and Curry, right? Like that's not going to determine who's better all time last year. The Lakers and the Warriors, do they have a rivalry? That's what I care about. I care about teams and rivalries like LA Clippers Lakers rivalry. There's no rivalry between, Brooklyn and New York, like the Nets and Knicks. There's no rivalry there. Players aren't bought into it. And you need to, as the players, sell that rivalry. You need to show people that you're bought into that because that connects you with the fans. That helps that connection that makes your team good to root for those fans. A lot of this is going to come off the wrong way for sure. And I don't mean that the players aren't doing enough fan service, right? All I'm saying is that if the players replicated the like rivalries that the fans had and then connected them together, like that would produce special entertainment for the fans. It would produce a really, really rewarding victory for the players because you want to beat those guys. Those guys are your rivals. It's not fun and games. These aren't your coworkers. These are your enemies, and like all of this is obviously really cliche and a little silly. And I know the NBA players themselves don't fully buy into these rivalries the same way, but if they take it just a little bit more seriously, I think the product you're going to watch like on TV is going to be substantially more entertaining and well worth the effort. Not that anybody is actually going to stay to the end and watch this, but just to clarify a few things here. One, I don't think that players actually need to despise each other. I don't think they need to hate each other to buy into a rivalry. But the point would stand that if these players, at least for the sake of entertainment, bought into the rivalries a little bit, not only would they have more engagement from the fans, more connection to the fans, more support from the fans, which would overall be a better product to view from the fans' perspective. The players themselves would have that extra motivation that, makes them play just the best brand of basketball that they can because they really want to beat these guys. And I'm not saying that there aren't rivalries in the NBA. Like, I've already listed some current ones, but a lot of the rivalries are heading towards like between two players and not teams. And I think that the culture of certain teams just hating other teams, I know that like new players aren't always bought into that, but if you watch the history of the game and you care about the history of basketball and putting on the jersey as the people before you did, and caring about that rivalry, I think overall you're going to keep these fans interested for decades and decades. And that engagement just is so important, for acknowledging and respecting the history of the league, and also just for pure entertainment value. If these guys hate these teams and this team hates that team, and they really want to beat each other, you're going to watch the best basketball possible. While fans are kind of toxic and they do get out of control sometimes, I still think rivalries between teams is beneficial for the game. I think a lot of the toxicity comes from players, fans fighting amongst each other rather than, people being fans of an actual basketball team. If the rivalries were between the teams and not the players, I think that there would be a lot more healthy discourse in basketball amongst the fans. And I also think that you're going to watch an objectively more enjoyable product.